Hey guys, welcome to the Electoral College in 10 minutes. In the next 10 minutes, we're going to take you through some basic ideas about how the Electoral College was developed, how it works, and some of it in action throughout the last couple hundred years of elections that we've had in the United States. The Electoral College is spelled out in Article 2 of the Constitution in terms of the process on how that works. It's an example of, important word, indirect democracy, which means that we don't choose our president directly. It's kind of funneled through this system that we've developed. Why would they do that? Well, it's a great example of federalism. One of the reasons why we want to make sure that the states are involved in the process of electing the president is that we want the states to be part of that federalistic family, right? That they're electing the federal president. And actually, I believe it was the Virginia plan. We go back to the ideas of how we put the Constitution together at the Constitutional Convention, that argue that it should be Congress who should choose the president, kind of like a parliamentary system like they have in many places in Europe. However, many felt, or some felt, especially the anti-feds, that this would be too cozy of a relationship. If the legislative branch chose the executive branch, they would, in an analogy sense, be in bed together, which would not be good for separation of powers. So what they did is they compromised, and rather than having kind of a winner-take-all, what they feared would happen is that the country would become factionalized, and kind of the biggest faction, the biggest group of people would win. Some people who are critics of the constitutional system of how they put it together, like an economic interpretation of the Constitution, argued that it was because the founders of the country were fearful of the larger masses of poor people, and therefore they broke up democracy in a way where that group, or no one group, one faction, would be able to garner control. I'll give you a real quick quote from Federalist 10, maybe James Madison, Alexander Hamilton. And I think that you could take his words and you can figure out what they mean. He wrote in Fed 10, all communities divide themselves into the few and the many. The first are rich and well-born, the others are turbulent and changing. Therefore, give to the first a permanent share in government, so they may check the unsteadiness of the others. Now that's off memory, so if I messed up that quote, don't be commenting me. It's something like that, though. This idea that, we had to make sure that the system for electing the president, and in fact running the country, was set up in a way where no one faction, whether that be the poor faction, or today it be big business, or it be the minority faction, or it be the suburban faction, or whatever faction you can come up with, southern faction, northern faction, farmer faction, union faction, you could break up the country a million ways, that there would have to be some togetherness and compromise in order to get somebody elected. So the way that the Electoral College system works, and this is a basic kind of nuts and bolts, is that each state is given the power to come up with the way that they're going to kind of have what's called electors. Electors represent that state, if I can use that analogy again, in the family of federalism. So the more people you have in your state, the more electors you're going to be awarded. It's kind of like proportional representation. The way to get an Electoral College number, like New York is 31, California is 54, I'm guessing Pennsylvania is 21, I think Ohio is 21, and then Wyoming is 3, right? North Dakota is 3, South Dakota is 3. So that's basically, you're awarded the number of representation you have in the House. So for instance, Wyoming, how many House members do you think they have? 1, that's right, they only got 1. So they're awarded that 1 electoral vote, and then they get 2 for the senators, for their state representation in the Union. So actually, in a weird way, Wyoming is kind of rewarded for being small populated with the number 3. They don't deserve 3. I think the only other state that's overrepresented is the District of Columbia. We'll talk about the 23rd Amendment in a little while, but they get 3 electors, and they don't have that many people living in D.C. as per se Texas or California or Pennsylvania, one of those big states. So basically in the beginning, states kind of, would do whatever they needed to do to pick electors. Maybe it was who you knew, or you were in a political family, or yada, yada, yada. And there would be elections, and basically they were like the filter for the people. So in theory, the way the Electoral College system works is if New York says votes for Obama, right, by millions and millions of votes, the electors, the people that represent New York, technically they don't have to cast their votes for Obama. That's called a faithless elector. They can do it for whoever they want. And that goes to the intention of the founders, that they didn't really want to give this enormous power to the mass of the people. That there's filter, in a sense, a filter of the elite, a filter of somebody who is well-born, a filter of somebody who knows better, who's going to make sure that the person we elect for the president is sound or, safe or whatever it might be. But through the unwritten Constitution, the way that it has become to work is that those electors do vote for whoever won that state. So there are 538 electors. That's since 1964, that number, right? So basically half of that is 270. So when you win a state, you win that proportional electoral number. If you win New York by 1 vote, or you win New York by 18 gillion votes, you get 31, period. The only states that don't do that, North Dakota, Nebraska, Maine maybe, they have proportional representation. We won't explain that too much, but they break it up by district. They award whoever won the district the point, so they do it a little bit different. But under this system, what can happen is you can end up with more popular votes, but because you lost big states by small margins, you can lose the electoral vote. So it's not the guy with the most votes that wins, it's the guy to 270 first, and you get those numbers again by winning states. I don't know where to go, backwards or forwards. Really quick, early on, there was actually a larger problem, which is the states cast 2 votes, one for president and one for vice president. And the guy in second would be vice president. And this was kind of a problem because you would have people that didn't like each other as president and vice president. I believe in 1800 they had a large problem because Jefferson and Burr were tied. And now, I haven't said this before, but, what happens if nobody gets to 270? We've kind of taken it for favor. We've always had 2 major candidates. You split, 538, you're going to get 270 somehow. But, in Europe, you have a lot of political parties that run. And I think that was the predetermination, that you'd have a lot of political parties in the United States. They would split that up, and nobody would get to 270. And this goes back to the Constitutional Convention and the compromises that went on. Remember, we initially said the Virginia plan, the large state plan, wanted Congress to choose the president. So guess what happens if nobody gets 270 in the Electoral College? It goes to the House of Representation, and they choose. And in 1800, it was kind of I think they went through 30 ballots before they chose the winner. And that was when Alexander Hamilton, I believe, threw his weight with Thomas Jefferson. And they were kind of different political persuasions, so that was the compromise, and people felt as though it was the right thing to do. Immediately after that election, we passed the 12th Amendment. And that amendment makes it clear that the president and the vice president run on one ticket. Therefore, we won't have this problem again where the president and the vice president might be in opposing political parties. Remember, John Adams' vice president was Thomas Jefferson. You had a Fed, and the guy who came in second, the anti-Fed Democratic Republican Thomas Jefferson. I'm checking my YouTube time. I'm looking at the clock. So get the Electoral College down. Indirect democracy, unwritten in the sense that if you win the state, you win that number. 270 is the magic number. But the criticism, the big one, you don't have to win the popular vote, right? Why is it good? Because it makes factions not able to take over, and compromise is more available. I don't know what else to say, guys. I hope that's enough for the Electoral College. We'll see you in the future. We'll do a couple other green screen lectures and see where we go. So I'm just going to turn right now and say, that's all, folks.
That's all, folks.
We the people